Hello, I thought I would take this opportunity to read to you the rest of our class story, Oi, Caveboy, because we never did get to the end of it, did we? So I'm going to read it to you in chunks. So there'll be a series of videos, each probably with a chapter or two in them. But in case you've forgotten where we got to, here's a quick recap. Remember, Iggy was down in the pit and he was having to deal with all the different snakes challenges that he was being given, and he threw a snake out of the pit, but unfortunately it landed in the chief's lap, and now the chief is really poorly and the council are trying to decide what to do with Iggy. So I've gone back a little bit to part way through chapter 4 where the elders speak. I know I've read some of this to some of you, but this is just so those of you who are away can catch up. Wait! Iggy looked up and saw Hubba pushing through the crowd. Behind him came Mum and Dad, looking anxious and out of breath. For Urk's sake, stop this, cried Dad. The boy made a mistake. He meant no harm. Too late, snapped Borg. You're not part of this council. The elders have reached a judgment. Not quite, said a voice. Every head turned to see who had spoken. It was Gagga the Wise, who up until now Iggy had assumed was asleep. You speak of murder, Borg, he said. But tell me, who is dead? Borg scowled at him furiously. You said yourself. I said the chief had a fever. He is sick, very sick, but the gods may grant he recovers. Surely that's what we all hope. Oh, well, of course, stammered Borg, turning red for some reason. Gagga laced his pale fingers, resting them in his lap. He glanced at the dark clouds drifting across the sky. Allow me to make a suggestion, he said. In the far lands to the north grows a plant called the purple stankwort. Some of you may have heard of it. There was silence. The plant's juice is a powerful medicine, Gagga continued. I'm told it can cure almost anything, perhaps even snake bites. Borg folded his arms. All well and good, but what dung fool would risk his neck going to the far lands? Gagga smiled pleasantly. Perhaps a fool who wishes to make amends? Iggy blinked. Why was everyone staring in his direction? Chapter 5. Farewell to Urk. Early next morning, Iggy gathered the few things he needed for the long journey ahead. He'd never been to the far lands. In fact, he'd never been out of the valley of Urk. Part of him was looking forward to discovering the wide world beyond the river, but he might have felt better if Mum and Dad weren't acting as if they were never going to see him again. His mum hugged him for the third time that morning and thumped him on the back. You promise to be careful now? I promise, sighed Iggy. Keep away from them forests and anything that could eat you. I will, said Iggy. Anyway, I've got my catapult. Flaming Urk, muttered Dad. Mum ruffled Iggy's hair and sniffed. I'll be fine, Mum, said Iggy. In a few days' time I'll be back. Course you will, sniffed Mum, wiping her eyes. Don't mind me. It's just smoke from the fire. Dad seemed to be having trouble with his eyes too. You be careful, boy, he said gruffly. It's not safe out there. I know, Dad, said Iggy. There are wolves and wolifants. Not just them. Worse things, said Dad darkly. Come, there's something you should see. He led the way up the hill along a track that Iggy didn't know. Eventually they reached a ledge high above the valley, where he pulled aside some brambles to reveal the mouth of a cave. Iggy thought he knew all the caves in the Valley of Urk, but he'd never entered this one. He wondered why his dad had never spoken of it before. Inside they followed the passage, which eventually opened out into a large, shadowy cavern. Iggy stopped and stared. The walls were covered in strange paintings. There were pictures of wolves, deer, bison that looked so real he didn't dare get too close. Dad walked past them all and stopped at another painting. It showed tiny ant-like men being chased by a race of giants, armed with spears and clubs. Some of the ant-men lay on the ground in bright red pools of blood. One of them was running around without his head. "Them were painted long ago before my time," said Dad. "Who are they?" asked Iggy, tracing the outline of one of the giants. "No-necks," said Dad. "Well, that's what we call them." No-necks? Iggy had never heard the word before. "They're a tribe in the far lands. If you meet a no-neck, then you run, boy. Don't stop or smile or chat about the weather, just run." "Why?" said Iggy. "Because no-necks are savages," said Dad. Iggy stared at the towering giants chasing the little scared men. "But how will I know if they're no-necks?" "You'll know," said Dad grimly. "They're not like us. Mind what I say. You run." Iggy nodded. Suddenly, he wasn't looking forward to exploring the wide world beyond the river quite as much. Dad thought for a moment and reached inside his furs. "Here, take 'em," he said. Iggy looked down at the black, sharp-edged stones. "They're your flints. How will you make a fire?" They're your flints. How will you make a fire?" "Plenty more where they came from. You keep 'em, and mind you bring 'em back." Dad pressed the flints into his hand and looked away, wiping his eyes even though there was no smoke. "Go on now," he said. "There's someone waiting for you." Iggy hurried down the hillside, hoping it might be Amelie. Perhaps she had come to thank him for risking his life to save her father. And when the time came to say goodbye, her pale blue eyes would fill with tears. She would hold his hand and say, "There you are, you great swallop. I've been waiting ages." It wasn't his beautiful cousin. It was Hubba. "Oh," said Iggy, trying to hide his disappointment. "Come to see me off?" Hubba grinned broadly. "Nope." "To wish me luck, then?" "No point." "Why not?" "'Cause I'm coming with you." "Hubba, no, you can't." "Who says I can't?" Iggy tried to argue, but he was wasting his breath. Once Hubba had made up his mind, he stuck to it, and nothing would shift him. Besides, Iggy was secretly relieved. Adventures were all very well, but they were much better with two of you. Soon Iggy and Hubba were heading down the valley, chatting happily as if it was another morning and they were going hunting for yumberries. "Hubba," said Iggy, "have you ever wondered where the river goes?" "Nope." "But where do you think?" "Dunno." "Well, it must go somewhere." "Never thought about it." "But if you had to take a guess?" "Round the corner." "Well, then where?" "I don't know." While this pointless discussion went on, two dark figures were watching from high above the valley. Borg laughed his evil laugh, which was deeper and more evil than his everyday laugh. "Hur, hur, hur," sniggered his dim-witted son. "Shall we throw a rock at 'em, Dad?" "Don't be stupid, Snark. Just a little rock, shall us?" "I said put it down." Snark dropped the rock with a sulky gesture. "This is all working out even better than I'd planned," said Borg. "Is it?" said Snark. "Any day now that bone-brained hammerhead will be dead, and the elders will name a new chief. You know what this means?" Snark looked blank. Think, boy, a new chief. Someone close to you? Ummerly? Cried Snark. Not Ummerly, you bog trotter. I mean me, Borg. And once I'm chief, no one will stand in my way. He, he. Her, said Snark, watching the two boys wade across the river. But, Dad, what about Iggy? Oh, what about him? You said he were going to be chief one day, being as Hammerhead's his uncle. That, Snark, is why we put a swamp snake in the sack, remember? Oh yeah, that was funny, Pity it didn't bite him though. This way's better, said Borg. Hammerhead dies, and his runty little nephew gets sent to the far lands. It's perfect. Yeah, said Snark, except for the stinkweed. What stinkweed? You know, the flower that Gaga was talking about. What if Iggy finds her and brings her back? What if the chief gets better? What if, snapped Borg. What if I poke you in the eye? Ow! Borg gave his son a withering look. Sometimes he wondered if he had the brain of a gnat. When Borg became chief, Snark would be next in line, which was a worrying thought. Anyway, he said, you think some scrubby old weed can save Hammerhead? Dunno, said Snark, rubbing his eye. It might. Rubbish, snapped Borg. Even if it exists, they'll never find it. Why do you think no one ever goes to the far lands? 'Cause they're too far, said Snark. 'Cause they never come back. That's the last we'll see of your two little friends. They're as good as dead. Borg threw back his head, and his evil laughter echoed across the valley. Ho, 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 ho. And that is the end of chapter 5.